Welcome back, dear darlings. Today's story is my billionaire ex hired me to plan his wedding, so I legally ruined it. Don't forget to like and subscribe the channel before proceeding. Chapter 1. The Ultimate Contract. The coffee at Vows and Velvet was always artisanal, always ethically sourced, and currently doing absolutely nothing to soothe the spike of adrenaline shooting through Chloe's veins. Chloe prided herself on being the best wedding planner in the city. She was the woman who could source 500 white peonies in the dead of winter, calm a weeping mother-in-law with a single look, and untangle a seating chart nightmare in her sleep. Her motto was plastered in gold foil on her office wall: perfection is in the details. But the detail sitting across her marble desk right now was a catastrophic design flaw. Chloe? The voice was exactly the same. Smooth, slightly deep, and carrying that familiar tone of effortless privilege. It was the voice that had told her, 5 years ago, "I just need to find myself, Chloe. It's not you, it's me." Before he promptly packed his bags, flew to London, and blocked her on every social media platform known to mankind. Julian. He looked infuriatingly good. His hair was still perfectly styled, his jawline still sharp enough to cut glass, and his tailored suit practically screamed old money. But he wasn't alone. Clinging to his arm like a manicured barnacle was a woman who looked like a walking Pinterest board. She was blonde, radiant, and wearing a diamond engagement ring roughly the size of a cocktail olive. "Julian," Chloe managed, her professional smile locking into place with the rigid force of a bear trap. "What a wonderful surprise. Wait, you two know each other?" the fiancé chimed in, her voice a high-pitched chirp. She extended a hand, her nails a flawless shade of bridal blush. "I'm Tiffany." "Oh my gosh, Julian, you never told me you knew the Chloe Vance." "Her mood boards are literally the only reason I wake up in the morning." "We went to college together," Julian said quickly. Too quickly. His eyes met Chloe's, a flicker of genuine panic crossing his face. He hadn't known. He had just let his wealthy fiancé pick the top-rated boutique planner in the city. An eternity ago, Chloe smoothly replied, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "Calm down," she told herself. "You are a professional. You charge $10,000 just to show up." Then, Julian spoke again, leaning back in his chair with a lazy, familiar smirk that made her blood boil. "Yeah, just old friends. Small world, right? Well, Chloe, Tiffany deserves the absolute best. Money is no object. We want a wedding people will talk about for decades. Old friends." The phrase twisted in Chloe's gut. He hadn't just broken her heart, he had eviscerated her self-worth, leaving her to pay the rent on the apartment they shared while he found himself in Europe. And now he was sitting here, flush with cash, treating her like a ghost from a past he'd outgrown. Tiffany giggled, opening a massive binder. "I want classic elegance, but with a modern edge. Like, what if we did a traditional cathedral ceremony, but the reception was a total sensory experience? Oh, and Julian is so particular about his food. He hates cilantro, loves truffles, and we absolutely must have a signature cocktail that reflects our journey." Chloe's mind raced. Protocol demanded she politely decline due to a scheduling conflict. She could hand them off to her assistant, pour a massive glass of Pinot Grigio, and forget they ever existed. But then Julian opened his mouth one more time. "I just hope you can handle it, Chloe," he chuckled, a patronizing glint in his eye. "I know our vision is pretty grand. If it's too much project management for your boutique, we understand." Something snapped inside Chloe. It wasn't a loud break, it was the quiet, precise click of a trap door shutting. "Too much?" Chloe laughed, a sound as bright and brittle as champagne flutes clinking. "Julian, please, I eat grand visions for breakfast." She pulled out a sleek, matte black fountain pen and slid a 20-page document across the desk. "This is my standard contract. It guarantees a flawless execution of your vision, absolute discretion, and a non-refundable retainer. Once signed, I am legally bound to deliver the wedding of your dreams." She looked Julian dead in the eye, her smile widening. "And I never break a contract." Julian, eager to prove his wealth and dismiss any awkwardness, grabbed the pen. "Great, let's do it." He signed his name in sweeping, arrogant strokes. Tiffany squealed and signed right below him. As Chloe took the contract back, blowing gently on the ink to let it dry, a terrifyingly beautiful realization washed over her. The contract legally bound her to give them a wedding. But how they arrived at that wedding? The journey? The planning process? That belonged entirely to her. Julian wanted a wedding people would talk about for decades. And Chloe was going to make damn sure he got exactly what he paid for. Chapter 2. The Tasting of Tears. The first rule of malicious compliance, Chloe decided, was that you must never actually say no. You must always say yes, but with a hidden tax. 2 weeks after the signing, Chloe invited Julian and Tiffany back to her studio for the most crucial step of the early planning process, the catering and cake tasting. Tiffany had requested a rustic yet avant-garde menu, while Julian had reiterated his absolute disdain for cilantro and his obsession with high-end, classic truffles. Chloe had spent the last fortnight doing extensive research. She didn't need to break the contract. She just needed to weaponize it. Welcome back, you two. Chloe beamed, pulling out their chairs in the private tasting room. Today, we are sampling menus from Letwall, one of the most exclusive, experimental caterers in the state. They specialize in sensory journey dining. Tiffany bounced in her seat. Oh my gosh, Julian, look. The menus are printed on edible rice paper. Only the best for you guys, Chloe said smoothly, snapping her fingers. Her assistant, a college intern named Leo who looked terrified but thrilled to be included in the plot, walked in carrying the first course under a silver dome. For our appetizer, Chloe announced as Leo lifted the dome, we have an artisanal deconstructed soup. It's an exploration of earth and rain. Julian frowned, looking at the plate. It featured a single, perfectly spherical globule of translucent liquid resting on a bed of what looked exactly like potting soil. What is it, exactly? It's an herbal-infused cucumber and microgreen reduction, encapsulated in a calcium alginate bath, served over a bed of dehydrated pumpernickel and chicory dust, Chloe explained with practiced gravity. What she didn't mention was that microgreen reduction was 40% cilantro, a botanical cousin of cilantro that tasted exactly the same, only twice as potent. Because Julian had specified cilantro on his restriction list, the caterer technically hadn't violated the paperwork. Julian, wanting to look sophisticated in front of his wealthy fiancé, scooped up the sphere and popped it into his mouth. Chloe watched closely. For a second, Julian chewed. Then, his eyes widened in pure, unadulterated horror. The distinct, soapy, metallic taste of his worst nightmare exploded across his palate. He gagged softly, his face turning a faint shade of green. Oh, honey, is it good? Tiffany asked, eagerly stabbing her own sphere. It's. Julian choked out, desperately reaching for his water glass. It's avant-garde, Chloe cheered. It's supposed to challenge the palate, Julian. Tiffany, notice how the earthy notes of the chicory ground the sharp sharpness of the herb. It's a metaphor for how Julian grounds your bubbly personality. Tiffany practically melted. Wow, that is so deep. Julian, eat the dirt, it's a metaphor for us. Julian forced himself to swallow, his eyes watering. He looked at Chloe, his gaze narrowing. He knew exactly what she was doing, but because Chloe was nodding with pure, professional innocence, he couldn't prove a thing without looking like an uncultured idiot in front of his bride-to-be. Moving on to the main course, Chloe said, giving Leo the signal. The next dish was brought out. Julian's requested truffle-infused Wagyu beef. Except, Chloe had instructed the chef to use white truffle oil, specifically, a brand that utilized an incredibly high concentration of 2,4-dithiopentane, an organic compound that gives truffles their aroma but, in high doses, smells distinctly like natural gas and sweat. The moment the dome was lifted, a pungent, overwhelming odor filled the room. Ah, Julian muttered, covering his nose. Does that smell right to you? It's ultra-premium, wild-harvested Alba white truffle, Chloe lied smoothly, her face a mask of absolute sincerity. True connoisseurs know that the more pungent the aroma, the more exclusive the batch. I pulled a lot of strings to get this specific vintage for you, Julian. I know how much you love truffles. Julian stared at the steak. It looked beautiful, but it smelled like a mechanic's garage. Tiffany, whose palate was largely dictated by what looked good on Instagram, was already taking photos. The plating is stunning, Chloe. Babe, try it. With a trembling fork, Julian took a bite. The flavor was so intensely, aggressively earthy and chemical that a single tear escaped his left eye and rolled down his cheek. Oh, look, Tiffany cooed, clutching her chest. He's crying. It's so good he's literally crying. I am just overwhelmed by the experience, Julian squeezed out through clenched teeth, glaring at Chloe. That's the Chloe Vance magic, Chloe said, leaning in with a razor-sharp smile. I want your wedding to be absolutely unforgettable, Julian. Now, let's talk about the cake. I was thinking a beautiful, structural fondant, flavored with artisanal elderflower and organic, unrefined sea salt caramel. It has a very surprising finish. Julian looked like he wanted to sprint out of the building, but Tiffany was already clapping her hands. Phase 1 was complete. Julian's palate was ruined, his stomach was in knots, and he had legally agreed to a menu that would ensure he spent his wedding night starving. But Chloe was just getting started. The next item on the agenda was the venue walkthrough, and Chloe had a very specific location in mind. Chapter 3. The Venue of Shadows. The venue can make or break a wedding. Tiffany's initial prompt was classic elegance with a modern edge, a vague description that usually meant a high-end loft or a historic ballroom. Chloe, however, found a loophole. Welcome to the Obsidian Foundry, Chloe announced, throwing open the rusted iron doors of a cavernous, converted 19th-century industrial warehouse located on the absolute bleeding edge of the city's gentrified dock district. The air inside was cold, smelling faintly of old iron and damp concrete. Massive, exposed steel beams crisscrossed overhead, and the walls were intentionally distressed brick, complete with leftover industrial chains hanging decoratively from the ceiling. Tiffany stepped inside, her high heels clicking loudly against the uneven concrete floor. She looked around, her jaw slightly slack. Oh, wow, it's very concrete. It's industrial brutalism, Chloe corrected smoothly, her voice echoing in the vast, drafty space. It is the pinnacle of modern edge, Tiffany. Think about it. The contrast of your delicate, $15,000 lace gown against the harsh, unforgiving reality of raw iron. It's a visual representation of love conquering a harsh world. Oh, Tiffany gasped, her eyes widening. A visual representation. Julian, honey, look at the chains. It's like we're chained together by love. Julian was shivering. He had worn a light linen blazer, expecting a climate-controlled ballroom. Chloe, it's freezing in here. And what is that sound? From somewhere deep in the rafters, a rhythmic, low-frequency thrum-thrum-thrum resonated through the building. It sounded like a generator on its last legs, mixed with a distant subwoofer. That is the building's integrated ambient acoustics, Chloe replied without blinking. Because of the industrial zoning, the city requires the nearby water treatment facility to run its filtration pumps 24/7. But don't worry, I spoke to the venue manager. We can't turn it off, but we can lean into it. I'm thinking a custom techno-acoustic playlist for the cocktail hour to blend with the machinery. Julian looked horrified. Techno? At my wedding? Chloe, I wanted a classical string quartet. And you shall have one. Chloe countered instantly, pulling out the contract. Section 4, Paragraph B. The planner agrees to source a classical string quartet as requested by the groom. I have already booked the highly acclaimed Vanderbilt strings. However, Chloe smiled sweetly. Acoustics in a brutalist concrete warehouse are notoriously tricky. High frequencies shatter against the walls. To ensure the music doesn't sound like a screeching cat, the quartet will have to play in the designated acoustic sweet spot. She pointed to a raised iron platform at the far end of the warehouse, situated directly underneath a massive, dripping pipe. They'll be up there, Chloe said. Of course, because of the echo, the sound will take approximately 1.5 seconds to reach the guest seating area. It will create a beautiful, haunting, avant-garde delay effect. Very European. A delay? Julian stammered, his blood pressure visibly rising. People won't be able to recognize the songs. They'll recognize the vibe, Julian, Chloe said, patting his arm reassuringly. And let's talk about lighting. Standard ballroom lighting is so cliché. Here, we are going to use theatrical low-voltage halogen downlights. It creates deep, dramatic shadows. It'll make every single guest look like they're in a high-fashion film noir. What Chloe neglected to mention was that low-voltage downlighting placed directly overhead created terrible shadows under the eyes. It made even the most beautiful people look like they hadn't slept in 6 months, a fact that would completely ruin any candid guest photos. But on paper, it was custom theatrical lighting design, which fulfilled her contract perfectly. Tiffany was completely sold. Julian, it's so edgy. Nobody in my country club circle has ever done a wedding in a brutalist foundry. It's going to be iconic. Julian looked around the cold, echoing cavern, listening to the distant, rhythmic thumping of the sewage pumps, and realized he was utterly trapped. He looked at Chloe, his eyes burning with resentment. Is there heating? The contract states the venue must provide climate control, Chloe said, her smile radiant. They have 2 massive industrial space heaters. They sound a bit like jet engines when they kick on, but they'll keep the temperature at a cozy 62 degrees. Julian opened his mouth to protest, but Tiffany grabbed his arm, bouncing. Let's lock it in. Sign the venue release, Julian. As Julian reluctantly pulled out his pen to sign the venue authorization form, Chloe caught his eye. She gave him a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. The trap was setting beautifully. They had a menu that tasted like soap and gasoline, a venue that felt like a dystopian bunker, and a string quartet that would sound like a lagging Zoom call. Perfect, Chloe said, taking the signed paper. Next up, the wardrobe and dress fittings. Julian, we need to talk about your tuxedo fabric. Chapter 4. The Itch of Elegance. Fabric selection is the soul of a tuxedo, Chloe explained, her voice echoing in the plush, private dressing room of Vanguard tailors. Julian sat on a leather sofa, looking exhausted. His stomach was still gurgling from the deconstructed soup tasting, and he looked like a man who hadn't slept well. Tiffany, meanwhile, was buried under a mountain of bridal tulle in the adjacent room, undergoing her third gown fitting. I just want a classic black tux, Chloe, Julian said, his tone clipped. High-quality wool, breathable, simple, of course, Chloe said, nodding sympathetically. And per Section 7, Paragraph C of our contract, the planner shall source a premium, 100% organic, sustainably harvested textile for the groom's custom attire. I took that mandate very seriously. She signaled the master tailor, an elderly man named Henri whom Chloe had thoroughly bribed with a rare bottle of scotch. Henri stepped forward, holding a garment bag with the reverence of a priest holding a relic. Julian, allow me to introduce you to British raw tweed blended organic virgin wool, Chloe beamed. She zipped open the bag to reveal a charcoal black tuxedo. At a distance, it looked impeccably sharp, stiff, and aggressively tailored. Up close, however, the fabric looked less like silk and more like a high-end scouring pad. Julian stood up, frowning. He reached out and touched the sleeve. This feels incredibly stiff. And a little rough. That is the structural integrity of unrefined, uncombed virgin fibers, Chloe lectured flawlessly. Standard luxury wool is heavily chemically treated to strip away the sheep's natural protective coat. This blend retains its organic properties. It's heavy, it holds a razor-sharp silhouette, and most importantly, it is 100% sustainable. It feels like a burlap sack, Julian muttered. It feels like prestige, Julian, Chloe countered, her eyes flashing with a sharp, professional glare. You said you wanted a wedding people would talk about for decades. A floppy, mass-produced Italian silk tux is so forgettable. This screams old-world aristocracy. It has a presence. Julian sighed, feeling the weight of her intense gaze. He didn't want to look uncultured, especially not in a store where the cheapest socks cost $100. Fine, let's try it on. 10 minutes later, Julian stepped out of the changing stall. On the outside, he looked like a movie star. The suit nipped in perfectly at the waist, and the shoulders were commanding. But on the inside, Julian was living in a localized hell. The unrefined wool fibers, entirely devoid of a soft silk lining, because Chloe had requested an unstructured, breathable deconstructed interior, to match the brutalist theme of the venue, were digging directly into his skin. Within 30 seconds, his neck, armpits, and inner thighs were beginning to prickle. How does it feel? Chloe asked, leaning forward, tasting absolute victory. It's fine, Julian lied, his voice a full octave higher than usual. He subtly tried to shift his weight to stop his thighs from rubbing together. A little warm. Excellent. Because the venue is a bit drafty, this heavyweight weave will keep you perfectly insulated, Chloe said. Now, let's test your mobility. You'll be dancing, greeting guests, bending down. Let's see a deep squat. Julian glared at her. A squat? In a tux? We must ensure there are no wardrobe malfunctions on the day of, Chloe said smoothly. Standard protocol. Julian took a breath, braced his core, and bent his knees. The moment he lowered his hips, the coarse, abrasive wool rasped violently against his skin. A sharp, stinging itch flared up his legs. He winced, losing his balance, and stumbled forward, barely catching himself on the edge of the sofa. Oh, honey, you look so sharp, Tiffany cried, bursting out of the dressing room in a cloud of white lace. She ran over and hugged him, burying her face in his chest. Oh, it's so firm. It feels so masculine. Julian's face was turning red. The heat of the dressing room, combined with the heavy wool, was making him sweat. And the moment the sweat hit the unrefined fibers, the itching intensified tenfold. He looked like a man trying to stand perfectly still while being attacked by a swarm of microscopic ants. Chloe, Julian choked out, his eyes darting around frantically. Can we add a lining? A silk lining? Chloe pulled out her tablet, looking crestfallen. Oh, Julian, we could. But according to the shipping manifest for this specific organic textile, the artisan mill in Scotland requires a 6-week lead time for matching silk linings. If we alter the interior now, we violate the 100% organic holistic certified clause of the venue's sustainability pledge, which we signed last week. It could void our entire reservation. Julian stared at her. He knew. He could see the faint, demonic twinkle in her eyes. She had boxed him into a suit that was essentially a fashionable Iron Maiden. Is everything okay, Julian? Chloe asked, her voice dripping with sweet, maternal concern. You're twitching a little. I'm fine, Julian hissed through gritted teeth, desperately scratching his forearm through the thick sleeve. It's perfect. Wonderful, Chloe smiled, checking a box on her digital clipboard. The wardrobe is locked in. Up next is the guest invitations and the RSVP tracking. I've designed a very unique digital experience for your friends and family. Chapter 5. The Digital Labyrinth. The modern wedding RSVP process is supposed to be seamless. A QR code, a sleek website, a quick tap of accept or decline, and a choice between chicken or fish. Naturally, Chloe threw all of that out the window. I've spent the week building your custom wedding portal, Chloe announced during their weekly Zoom progress call. She shared her screen to reveal a stark, minimalist landing page that featured only a ticking digital countdown clock and a single, ominous black button labeled, Enter the Covenant. Tiffany gasped, clapping her hands. Oh my gosh, it looks like a luxury fashion brand launch. It's so exclusive. Julian leaned into his webcam, his brow furrowed. Chloe, where is our engagement photo? Where's the registry link? Where is the date? Julian, standard wedding websites are so aggressively commercial, Chloe sighed, injecting just a hint of disappointment into her tone. We discussed this. The Obsidian Foundry demands mystery. Per our contract, Section 12, Paragraph A. The planner shall design a bespoke digital RSVP system optimized for data security and engagement. She clicked the black button. The screen flashed, and a prompt appeared, requiring a username and a 16-character alphanumeric password. I have emailed a unique, encrypted key code to all 200 of your guests, Chloe explained. Once they enter their key, they are taken to a 3-tier questionnaire. To ensure absolute accuracy for the caterer, they must complete it within a rolling 4-minute window, or the session times out, and their reservation slot is locked for 24 hours. Julian stared at her, dumbfounded. A 4-minute window? Chloe, my grandmother is 84. She uses an iPad from 2012. She's not going to be able to bypass a cybersecurity firewall just to tell us she wants the steak. And that is why I implemented the audio captcha for accessibility, Chloe replied with a triumphant smile. She clicked a small speaker icon on the screen. Instead of a robotic voice saying numbers, a chaotic, avant-garde arrangement of a cello screeching and a low-frequency hum, the exact sound profile of the venue's sewage pumps, blasted through Julian's speakers. A robotic voice buried deep under the noise drone whispered, "Please select the images containing industrial slag." Julian rubbed his temples. He could already feel a tension headache blooming. My family is going to lose their minds. My boss from the firm texted me this morning asking if our website was a phishing scam. Oh, ignore them, honey, Tiffany chimed in, filing her nails. It filters out the people who don't really care about us. If they want to see us get married, they can figure out the slag puzzle. Exactly, Chloe agreed. And wait until you see the registry integration. Instead of asking for blenders and towels, I've set up a dynamic crowdfunding matrix. Your guests can micro-invest in fractions of your honeymoon excursions. But because the market fluctuates, the cost of their gift might change in real time depending on the value of the British pound. Julian looked like he wanted to scream. Chloe, this is psychological warfare. People are just going to mail us paper checks. Oh, they can't, Chloe said cheerfully, pulling up a clause on her screen. The digital portal explicitly states that by entering the site, guests agree to electronic-only transactions to maintain the wedding's carbon-neutral footprint. Paper checks will be turned away at the door by security. Julian slammed his laptop screen halfway down, staring at Chloe through the remaining gap. You're doing this on purpose, he muttered, his voice dropping to a dangerously quiet octave. Julian? Tiffany asked, looking up from her nails. What did you say? Chloe kept her camera face perfectly composed, the picture of professional innocence. I'm sorry, Julian? Am I doing what on purpose? Delivering a highly secure, bespoke, legally compliant digital experience that perfectly aligns with your fiancé's creative vision? Julian opened his mouth, but looking at Tiffany's ecstatic expression, and remembering the non-refundable $10,000 retainer, he swallowed his rage. Nothing. It's great. Just, can you send my grandmother a cheat sheet for the captcha? I'll see what I can do, Chloe lied smoothly. Now, let's move on to chapter 6. The floral design. Tiffany, I found the most breathtaking organic arrangements. They are truly wild. Thank you for watching, dear darlings. Part 2 will be uploaded soon. Don't forget to like and subscribe the channel, dear darlings.